As the Sandman Season of Mist in many ways carries on a dialogue with Dante's Inferno and Milton's Paradise Lost, this video will provide a brief background on these seminal works of literature. Artists and writers, they've been fascinated with imagining what hell's like for quite some time. During the Romanesque period of the Middle Ages, people would take Christian pilgrimages to Jerusalem, Rome, and Santiago de Compostela in northern Spain. In response, pilgrimage-type churches sprang up along the route, leading to Santiago de Compostela in Spain, where the Cathedral of St. James stood. These churches were very large to accommodate the expected crowds. Shown here is what the pilgrims would have seen above the door of one such church along the way, that of Saint Foy, or Saint Faith, in Conques, France. Like a number of other churches, the decorative sculpture above the door is filled with the scene of the Last Judgment. This is the moment when Christ decides who will go to heaven and who will go to hell. As one might expect, the sculptors give us a representation of hell, where Satan, demons, and snakes torture the damned souls. Turning to literature, Dante Alighieri was instrumental in creating a lasting vision of hell in Western art and literature. An Italian writer, Dante was born in Florence in 1265. He wrote the Divine Comedy, a three-part epic poem recording his journey from hell to purgatory and finally to paradise. Dante is guided through hell and purgatory by the Roman poet Virgil. This is a posthumous painting of Dante by the Italian Renaissance artist Botticelli. In another Renaissance image of the Italian writer, Dante is shown with the 7 steps of purgatory behind him, the Inferno to his right, and paradise to his left. Paradise is depicted as Florence Cathedral. The poem begins on the night before Good Friday in the year 1300, halfway along our life's path. Dante's 35 years old. He's half of the biblical life expectancy is 70. He's lost in a dark wood, which is understood as sin, conscious that he's ruining himself and that he's falling into a deep place where the sun is absent. Dante's at last rescued by Virgil, and the two of them begin their journey to the underworld. Each sin's punishment in Inferno is a contrapasso. It's a symbolic instance of poetic justice. For example, fortune tellers have to walk with their heads on backwards, unable to see what is ahead, because that was what they had tried to do in life. The 3 types of sin provide the 3 main divisions of Dante's hell. Upper hell, the first 5 circles for the self-indulgent sins, circles 6 and 7 for the violent sins, and circles 8 and 9 for the malicious sins. Having survived the depths of hell, Dante and Virgil ascend out of the undergloom to the mountain of purgatory on the far side of the world. The mountain is on an island, created by the displacement of rock, which resulted when Satan's fall created hell. The mountain has 7 terraces, corresponding to the 7 deadly sins. The classification of sin here is more psychological than that of the Inferno, being based on motives rather than actions. It is also drawn from Christian theology rather than classical sources. Dante's illustrative examples of sin and virtue draw on classical sources as well as on the Bible and on contemporary events. When he finally arrives at heaven, Beatrice, the love of Dante's life, guides Dante through the 9 celestial spheres of heaven. These are concentric and spherical, as in the cosmology of Aristotle and Ptolemy. Dante and Beatrice met as children. Beatrice ended up in an arranged marriage with another, and she died at 25. While the structures of the Inferno and Purgatorio were based on different classifications of sin, the structure of Paradiso is based on the 4 cardinal virtues and the 3 theological virtues. The Divine Comedy finishes with Dante seeing God. In a flash of understanding, which he cannot express, Dante finally understands the mystery of Christ's divinity and humanity, and his soul becomes aligned with God's love. Shown here is one of the very famous illustrations created by Gustave Doré for a 19th century edition of Dante's Inferno. A printmaker and comics artist, Doré also produced illustrations for Milton's Paradise Lost. Dante's Inferno echoes through Seasons of Mists. While Dante awoke confused in a dark wood, Dream was motivated to travel to hell on both occasions. First to search for an item vital to his sphere of influence, and then later to correct his mistake with Nada. Both are guided during their visit. Dream's guide during his first visit to hell is the DC Comics character named Etrigan the Demon, created by Jack Kirby in 1972. Etrigan even voices that his role is to be a guide. Quote, "For innocents abroad need guides of note, and who notes more than me than Etrigan?" End quote. This interaction takes place outside the Wood of Suicides. This is the same route that Dante once traveled. It is Etrigan who leads past the cages, where Dream's former lover Nada is imprisoned. Etrigan brings Morpheus to Lucifer's palace before separating from the Dream King. Season of Mist is built around the possession of the keys to hell, passing to another. Dante stresses a set of keys as well. However, they represent papal power and corruption. The English writer John Milton was born in 1608 and achieved international renown within his lifetime. His epic poem, Paradise Lost, is widely considered to be one of the greatest works of literature ever written. The poem concerns the biblical story of the fall of man, the temptation of Adam and Eve by the fallen angel Satan, and their expulsion from the Garden of Eden. Milton's purpose, stated in Book 1, is to, quote, justify the ways of God to men, end quote. It's clear in Milton's narrative that he places blame for the fall on the humans and Satan. To emphasize this, he indicates that Adam and Eve were repeatedly and explicitly warned with regard to eating from the tree of knowledge. Satan is the first major character introduced in the poem, formerly called Lucifer. He was the most beautiful of all angels in heaven. Milton presents Satan/Lucifer as a tragic hero, and it can be argued that he's the protagonist of Paradise Lost, despite the second of its two narrative arcs focusing on Adam and Eve. Pandemonium is the capital of hell in Paradise Lost. John Milton invented the name for the capital of hell, quote, the high capital of Satan and his peers, end quote. It's described a lot like classical Rome or the new St. Peter's in Rome. Gaiman gives the reader a signpost announcing that Lucifer and hell in Season of Mist are going to be different from that of Milton's. His Lucifer quote a very famous line from Paradise Lost, quote, "Still better to reign in hell than serve in heaven," end quote. Gaiman's Lucifer elaborates further though. Quote, "We didn't say it, Milton said it, and he was blind." Milton was in fact both blind and poor when Paradise Lost was published in 1664. One could argue that Gaiman's Lucifer exhibits free will. He's able to close down hell. Additionally, he's not characterized as evil, whispering in the ears of humans. Lucifer relates this to us. Quote, "They use my name as if I spend my entire day sitting on their shoulders, forcing them to commit acts they would otherwise find repulsive. I've never made one of them do anything. Never. They live their own tiny lives," end quote. One would surmise from this statement that Adam and Eve possessed the agency when it came to the garden. Season of Mist also alludes to Paradise Lost by using subtitles. They appear under the chapter headings, on the title pages of each chapter, as well as on the comic book covers for the story arc. The Chapter 1 subtitle reads, quote, "In which the Lord of Dreams makes preparations to visit the realms infernal. Farewells are said, a toast is drunk, and in hell the adversary makes certain preparations of his own."